Hello and welcome. I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines of this hour. The US and Iran agree to hold talks in Oman on Friday despite sharp differences over the scope of negotiations. Washington seeks to include Iran's missile program, while Tehran says only its nuclear file is on the table. Envoys from Russia and Ukraine meet in Abu Dhabi for US-brokered talks on ending the war. The meeting comes as a Russian cluster munitions attack kills 7 people at a market in Ukraine. Meanwhile, Kiev's energy minister warns power cuts could intensify in the coming days. He says Russia may launch new air attacks on power and heating networks. The UN chief calls the expiry of the New START treaty a grave moment for global peace and security. He urges the US and Russia to quickly negotiate a new nuclear arms control framework. A legal rights group says Venezuela frees 22 more prisoners. The releases come as interim government promises slowly continue. Gaza health officials say Israeli tank shelling and airstrikes killed 24 Palestinians, including 7 children. The dead include a medic killed while responding to a strike in Khan Yunis. Trump says China is considering boosting purchases of US soybeans after what he calls positive talks with Xi Jinping. Beijing may raise buying to 20 million tons, even as it warns Washington over Taiwan arms sales. Donald Trump endorses conservative prosecutor Clay Fuller in a Georgia special election to replace Marjorie Taylor Greene. Trump calls Fuller an America First patriot and a strong supporter of his MAGA agenda. US President Donald Trump says he had what he called an excellent phone conversation with Chinese President Xi Jinping, discussing a wide range of global issues, including trade, energy, Taiwan, Iran, and Russia's war in Ukraine. The call came just hours after President Xi spoke with Russian leader Vladimir Putin, with both leaders vowing to deepen ties amid what they described as a turbulent global environment. Posting on Truth Social, Trump said the discussion was all very positive, adding that both he and Xi recognize the importance of maintaining strong ties. The US president says he is expected to visit China in April and has continued to emphasize his personal rapport with Xi, even as Washington and Beijing clash over trade, technology, and Taiwan. China's state media said the two leaders agreed differences could be managed through mutual respect, while reaffirming that Taiwan remains a core priority for Beijing. Joining us now on the broadcast is Ross Feingold, a political analyst. He joins us live from the Taiwanese capital of Taipei. Thank you very much, Ross, for joining us here on the broadcast. This relationship between Xi and Trump, of course, Trump emphasizing this personal rapport with the Chinese president. However, of course, a key issue remains Taiwan. How do you think the two leaders will manage such an issue, of course, acknowledging Beijing's firm stance of reunification?
And the easy way out for both sides is to simply stick to their long time and well-known position. So for China, that is insisting that Taiwan is part of the People's Republic of China, not renouncing the use of force to take over Taiwan. For the United States, it's basically saying we understand what the Chinese position is, we don't necessarily agree with it, and we will continue to sell weapons to Taiwan, something that the United States is obligated to do under a domestic law called the Taiwan Relations Act, and basically continue to have the same interaction that it's always had with Taiwan, even though it's not called diplomatic relations and there's lots of effort that goes into saying it's unofficial so that China doesn't get upset every time there's interaction between the U.S. and Taiwan governments. And the important part also would be whether or not President Trump says the United States will send troops to defend Taiwan if there is a war, which up to now President Trump has not been willing to say. President Biden said that multiple times. Each time his staff quickly said, no, he didn't mean that. There's no change in policy. So to make a long story short and to answer your question, both sides will probably just say the same things that they've always said and do the same things that they've always done.
And in terms of trade, of course, both countries remain crucial to one another. How do you see that relationship developing while ties on the diplomatic front when it comes to certain foreign policy issues remain different?
There are a few things going on with trade. Clearly, the United States itself, and as well as putting pressure on countries that are close to the United States, whether that's in Europe, in Central and South America, and here in East Asia, the United States is currently pressuring companies and countries not to rely on China so much. This is so-called de-risking or decoupling, as some people might call it. Reduce reliance on goods made in China, whether that's electronics or pharmaceuticals or other products. At the same time, Trump has clearly said that he's okay with the U.S. selling stuff to China, whether that's agricultural products or other made in the USA products. And he'd like China to buy more U.S. energy instead of buying from Russia or the Middle East. And also Trump has indicated, as he's done with other major markets around the world, whether it's the European Union or India, he wants those countries to remove trade barriers for United States companies to do business in those countries. So again, just like President Trump is eager for U.S. companies to sell stuff from the U.S. to China, he also seems eager to facilitate American companies doing business in China as well. The one thing, again, he seems to be pursuing, as he did in his first term, is to buy less from China.
And Ross, this talk came after Russian President Vladimir Putin and Xi Jinping had a phone call vowing to deepen ties. Of course, the Russia-Ukraine war has been the forefront of Donald Trump's agenda to solve foreign policy-wise. Do you think China can realistically pressure Russia to change course in Ukraine? And of course, if China claims this neutrality, which of course it does, but also deepens ties with Moscow, is that neutrality credible?
Ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, there's been this hope that China would put pressure on Russia to pull back, to end the war, to reach a ceasefire. That has been going on literally since day one, whether it was the Biden administration, European countries, or even Ukraine itself and President Zelensky. There's been this repeated call for China to put pressure on Russia, and it's just never happened. It's not going to happen. Now, maybe behind closed doors, when senior Chinese officials meet with senior Russian officials, they give that message. But publicly, at least, very clearly, China has continued to support Russia, whether that's through trade or not supporting any initiatives globally to punish Russia. So when they say they have this strong relationship, they really do mean it. However, at the same time, a lot of people speculate that China likes the war to go on because it's causing disagreements among the Western countries. It actually keeps Russia's economy and military in a weak state. And for China, that's a better situation. I actually think China would prefer the war to end. It would prefer to do business with Russia without the threat of international sanctions. It would like to start buying agricultural products from Ukraine again. It would like global food prices to come down. So I think China does actually benefit from the end of the war, but it's not going to be the facilitator for the end of the war to happen.
And Donald Trump, once again, boasting his personal diplomacy strategy, frequently emphasizing his personal rapport with Xi. Do you think that strategy is effective when coming to dealing with leaders like the Chinese president?
It depends what issue one wants to prioritize. If one wants to prioritize trade, for example, the fact is President Trump has negotiated a number of agreements with countries around the world of varying sizes, but some of them are very large trading partners like the EU, Japan, and South Korea. And those deals have been pretty good for the United States if the money actually shows up as far as the investment commitments are concerned. And part of the reason those deals were negotiated is Trump gets along well one-on-one with a number of those leaders. That's just the reality, even though we often think of Trump as criticizing foreign leaders, most notably Trudeau and more recently Carney in Canada. But again, some of those one-on-one meetings, whether it's with von der Leyen or the leaders of Japan and South Korea, President Trump he's his gracious host, and they get along well. It's all smiles. So that seems to be President Trump's strategy with Xi Jinping at the moment. Again, it did bring about a trade truce last year. There is the possibility of China buying significantly more U.S. agricultural and energy products, and also the potential for U.S. companies to have better access to the Chinese market, all of which is what Trump seems to be pursuing at the moment. So at least for now, it seems that President Trump wants to emphasize the good personal relationship he has with Xi Jinping.
Ross Feingold, do stay with us as we move over the Taiwan Strait for our next story. And the Taiwanese president, Lai Ching-te, says that relations between Taiwan and the US are rock solid and cooperation programs will continue and not change after Chinese President Xi Jinping discussed Taiwan with US President Donald Trump. In a call, Xi told Trump that the US should carefully handle arms sales to the island that Beijing views as its own territory. Lai expressed that Taiwan and the US have strong channels of communication, adding that US commitments to Taiwan also remain unchanged. Let's listen in.
台美关系坚如磐石，各项合作计划持续进行，不会改变。我希望国人同胞都能够支持政府、支持国家，让我们一起携手前进。我们国家一定可以越来越好。去年的经济成长率高达8.63%，股市已经突破3万点，就业情况15年来最好。所以，当我们国家持续在有这些重大成果的时候，我们的国防一定要持续强化，有强大的国防保护我们国家主权，维护 民主自由的生活方式，我们这些重大成果也才有办法保障。
Ross, what is Lai signaling there by calling the US-Taiwan ties rock solid, particularly after that phone call between Trump and Xi?
Rock solid, this is a term that recent leaders of Taiwan have used, including Lai's predecessor, President Tsai Ing-wen, and now President Lai himself. So it's kind of the strongest possible phrase they could think of to assure the public here in Taiwan that relations between the U.S. and Taiwan remain close. There's constant speculation among critics of President Lai here in Taiwan that the U.S. commitments to Taiwan are not as strong as the government portrays it. Here in Taiwan, they call this America's skepticism, or skepticism towards the United States, and the government has to combat that. And it's understandable that they would, and it's understandable that President Lai and his team want to reassure the public that even though President Trump has phone calls with Xi Jinping, met Xi Jinping last October, President Trump is going to visit China and says all these nice things about Xi Jinping. At the same time, U.S. commitments to Taiwan, whether that's arms sales or the trade space, continue to move along. And to be fair to President Lai, he is correct. The U.S. did announce a major weapons sale to Taiwan last year. The U.S. just reached a trade agreement with Taiwan. There's a number of dialogue mechanisms between the two governments covering trade and technology that are ongoing. So yes, it's correct to say that relations between the U.S. and Taiwan are strong, but what we really don't know is would President Trump or a future U.S. president send troops to defend Taiwan? And there's no way that we could possibly know that because there's no treaty, And that decision will be made by the U.S. president if and when such an emergency occurs.
And do you think America's long-standing policy of strategic ambiguity on Taiwan is becoming harder to sustain, particularly under the Trump administration?
It certainly looks for now that President Trump wants to maintain that strategy. That's why whenever he's asked, he tends to give the same answer, which is, I'm not going to say what I would do if there is an emergency, an invasion by China. He has said in the past that he would impose tremendous tariffs on Chinese goods if China were to attack Taiwan. He's also said Xi Jinping knows what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to say so. So one thing for sure is President Trump has not committed to sending U.S. troops. He's never directly said that. So from that perspective, President Trump looks set to continue the policy of strategic ambiguity.
The Organization of American States,
Ross
OAS,
Feingold, thank you very much for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to talk to you as always. We now turn on to our next story, and the family of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, the mother of NBC's Today Show anchor Savannah Guthrie, is urgently searching for her after she vanished from her home near Tucson, Arizona. Authorities believe she was abducted as she has limited mobility and could not have left her home unassisted. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos called the case a kidnapping, and investigators are desperate for any tips. Guthrie's family, including Savannah, has posted emotional appeals begging for information and pleading for her safe return. On Wednesday, President Donald Trump announced that federal agents would assist in the search efforts. The family remains hopeful and is relying on the public's help to bring Nancy home safely. Listen in to what the American news anchor posted on her social media.
On behalf of our family, we want to thank all of you for the prayers for our beloved mom, Nancy. We feel them, and we continue to believe that she feels them too. Our mom is a kind, faithful, loyal, fiercely loving woman of goodness and light. She's funny, spunky, and clever. She has grandchildren that adore her and crowd around her and cover her with kisses. She loves fun and adventure. She is a devoted friend. She is full of kindness and knowledge. Talk to her and you'll see.
The light is missing from our lives. Nancy is our mother. We are her children. She is our beacon. She holds fast to joy in all of life's circumstances. She chooses joy day after day, despite having already passed through great trials of pain and grief. We are always going to be merely human, just normal human people who need our mom. Mama, if you're listening, we need you to come home. We miss you.
Our mom is our heart and our home. She is 84 years old. Her health, her heart is fragile. She lives in constant pain. She is without any medicine. She needs it to survive. She needs it not to suffer. We too have heard the reports about a ransom letter in the media. As a family, we are doing everything that we can. We are ready to talk. However, we live in a world where voices and images are easily manipulated. We need to know, without a doubt, that she is alive and that you have her. We want to hear from you and we are ready to listen. Please reach out to us. Mommy, if you are hearing this, you are a strong woman. You are God's precious daughter, Nancy. We believe and know that even in this valley, He is with you. Everyone is looking for you, Mommy, everywhere. We will not rest. Your children will not rest until we are together again. We speak to you every moment, and we pray without ceasing, and we rejoice in advance for the day that we hold you in our arms again. We love you, Mom.
Love you, Mom.
We love you, Mom. Stay strong.
We love you.
We'll bring you more on that developing situation as it develops. Of course, we stay in North America as we turn to our next story, and the Colombian President Gustavo Petro addressed the Organization of American States Permanent Council in Washington on Wednesday, questioning the relevance of multilateral institutions and calling for global democratic reform. Petro met with OAS Secretary General Albert Ramdin before his intervention on his third day visiting Washington. The Colombian leader criticized the United Nations for failing to prevent what he described as a genocide in Gaza, stating its existence was being questioned due to its lack of power. Petro proposed a dialogue between civilizations and global democracy as alternatives to weakened multilateral institutions, warning that humanity had limited time to address climate and social crises. He also addressed the fentanyl crisis, describing it as a deadly poison rather than a psychoactive substance that reflects a humanity without hope or direction. Let's listen in to what Petro said.
Si Naciones Unidas fue fundada para que no hubiera más genocidio como el que cometió el Estado alemán de los nazis, frente a soviéticos, chinos con los japoneses y judíos y otros pueblos del mundo. Si fue fundada para eso y no pudo detener el genocidio en Gaza, ¿para qué sirve? Está cuestionada su existencia, así de simple. No tiene poder.
Matthew Vadum joins us now, an American journalist and author. He joins us live from the American capital of Washington. Matthew, thank you very much for discussing this story with us. Of course, this comes as Donald Trump met Petro in the White House, a significant meeting of two clashing ideologies. But this visit, an analysis of the Western Hemisphere and some strong statements coming out from the Colombian president. What does Gustavo Petro mean by questioning the relevance of multilateral institutions, in particular, of course, the United Nations?
I think that Gustavo Petro means that these large international organizations are not left-wing enough. He wants for example, he wants the OAS, the Organization of American States, by American states meaning the Western Hemisphere, North and South American, and Latin American countries. He wants them to have much more of a focus on, global warming policies and redistribution of wealth and the things that fall in with his socialist worldview. Remember, he was a communist guerrilla fighter before. In a terrorist group in a revolutionary group anyway, before he became president of Colombia. So when he is criticizing multilateral organizations, it is because he doesn't believe they lean far enough to the left. And that's the direction he wants to push them in, including the Organization of American States.
And Matthew, what have you made of Petro's visit to the United States? Of course, Donald Trump imposed sanctions on the Colombian president and issued some pretty aggravating statements towards him directly after the United States captured President Nicolas Maduro. Have you
Right.
seen his visit as valuable to the Western Hemisphere?
I don't know if it's valuable to, I don't know if Petro contributes anything of value to the world, but he is doing this to improve his standing. Remember, he doesn't like that the United States invaded Venezuela and seized Nicolas Maduro on drug charges and brought him back to the United States to stand trial. So, you know, he is a little insecure, and if I were him, I would be too. And he is trying to the extent that he can, you know, play nice with Donald Trump, because he is afraid of what the United States might do to him. This is the first leftist president that Colombia has ever had, to the best of my knowledge, and he is in some, you know, he's in uncharted waters, and I can see why he feels the need to go on these public relations campaigns, to go on a world tour in order to bolster his image abroad and at home. This is self-protection.
Matthew, is cooperation not important, though, given the fact that the United States and Colombia are long-time allies? Biden, of course, labeled Colombia a crucial non-NATO ally previously, and Petro, of course, is a democratically elected leader.
Well, he's a democratic socialist, you know, which, you know, means he's a Marxist. But it is important that Colombia and the United States have a good relationship. They have been friendly for a long time, and you know, it could be that President Petro recognizes that he's gone a little bit too far, like when he visited the United States a few months ago and got riled up in a speech in New York and urged U.S. soldiers to mutiny against President Trump. You know, and I thought, wow, I'm surprised he wasn't expelled immediately as persona non grata from the United States. So I think he probably recognizes that he's gone a little bit too far, and he's trying to make the best of a bad situation, and he's trying to restore some of the trying to make the relationship between Colombia and the United States work better than it has over the last few months.
We've seen Donald Trump meet with people of opposing ideologies. Of course, the likes of Zoran Mamdani in the Oval Office. We've seen a meeting between Lula da Silva and Trump. Of course, verbal differences have occurred, and sanctions have even been involved with a number of these leaders. But does that show Donald Trump's openness and willingness to work with people with opposing ideologies?
Certainly, he's the president, and he recognizes that he's the head of state and for the United States, and he needs to reach out to people who have opposing political viewpoints. Look how soon after Zoran Mamdani, the communist, now mayor of New York City, was elected, he invited him to the White House and gave him a very friendly reception, because New York is a big, important city in the United States, and it's probably a good idea for the President of the United States and the mayor of New York City to have a working relationship. So, you know, Donald Trump talks trash, to use an expression, a lot of the time, denounces people, writes, you know, seemingly unhinged social media posts on his website, Truth Social. But, you know, when he comes face to face, he's willing, you know, to talk to people. And he's not, ultimately, he is pragmatic. He knows when things are not going his way, and he knows how to pull back. For example, even though he believes very firmly in his the ICE mission of deporting illegal aliens, he recognizes that the public has, to an extent, recoiled at some of the more aggressive tactics that federal immigration agents have been using. And so he's dialed back the campaign a bit, bowing to public sentiment. So, you know, he wants to do things a certain way, but if he sees that it's not working, he is willing to change course.
Matthew Vadum, thank you very much for taking the time and joining us. Pleasure to talk to you as always. But that is all that we have time for this hour. Keep watching NewsX World for more international news updates.